time to gather round. Get all the kids in the neighborhood. Yeah! We'll sit in circles and clap our hands and clap, clap, clap. We'll jump up and down and scream. Yeah! It's the serial killer story hour, and it's live with Pete Altieri. That's the bald guy from Murder Metal Mayhem. Come on, kids, scream out! Serial killer story hour, yeah! Serial killer story hour, yeah, yeah! How about one more time with some balls, kids? Yeah. Serial killer story hour, yeah! Horns high, high, high.
What is up, everybody? Good to see you. I hope you like the little Christmas cheer here on Horns High. You know, it's getting to be that time. About a week away now. We're getting close. We're getting close. Hopefully Santa is bringing you plenty of Murder Metal Mayhem stuff. Been seeing some people buying stuff. That's great. And if you I think they sent out a text today that like today's like the last day. Today or tomorrow, the last days before they'll guarantee you'll get your shirts by Christmas. So I got a bunch of stuff coming from TeePublic for sure. I ordered a bunch of things from Murder Metal Mayhem stuff, other stuff, just randomly. Christmas gifts. Perfect for that. Perfect for it. So but good to see you guys here for a serial killer story hour. Got a good one tonight. This guy is really gruesome. Fritz Honka, the German serial killer. We haven't been to Germany yet, but we're going there tonight. This is in Hamburg, Germany. Now, I was supposed to go, well, right when I got hurt in the Army, I had orders to go to Korea, but because I got hurt, they rescinded the orders, and then I wound up almost getting orders to go to Germany when they realized I was still injured. Then they wound up saying, well, why don't we just get this guy out of here? And that's when they processed me out. So anyway, I've almost been to Germany in the Army. I think there's 2 bases there, but I'd never been. But everybody that had been there said it was a good time. They liked it there. So yeah, we got some German viewers or anybody in Europe that's interested. This should be a good case. And next week, we're going to be going back to the UK. I'm going to go back to the UK. We got our friends that are over there. We got plenty of listeners that are from the UK. So we want to keep them happy. And so we'll go do a UK case. I'll tell you who it is when we're wrapping it up, but it's a good one. It's a good one. And it's definitely not one you've probably heard of before. Donna says, love the Christmas cheer. Very cool, Donna. Yeah, you know, I'm not a huge, like, gotta have the house decorated like crazy. When the kids were little, we did. But without kids being around here, it's really not quite the same with that kind of stuff, unfortunately. And of course, that's just me. But yeah, remember to like this video. So who do we got here tonight? We got Misleading Evidence. Alicia did a great job doing that live with me on Saturday. That was awesome. That was awesome. Of course, we got Donna Lembo. And let's see. I think I saw Jethro Trolls. And yeah, oh yeah, there I see Jethro Troll. Unidentified celestial objects. Okay, that's an interesting one. I don't remember that. Gone Girl 420. Love it. Loving it. My mom, Adele. What's up, Mom? Love to see you here. Hope you like the cheer here, Ma. I put up, you know, around the screen. I've got a Venom shirt on though, so the contradictions are kind of crazy, but whatever. We're just having a good time. All right. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about Fritz Honka, whether you want to hear it or not. I guess if you're here, you want to hear this. If it's not your thing, of course, go bow out. But we're going to get into it. I've got some good information to pass on about his story. Did some research. I watched videos on this dude. We did this as a podcast, so I've already been through this with that, but it's been a while ago. I don't remember it much. That's why I had to kind of look at this whole case of this guy, because he is a character, but he's not one household name, even with those that are super into true crime. So I'd be curious in the anybody in the chat that that has heard of him. I would definitely like to hear it. If not, then I probably just assume nobody has, because like I said, he's pretty obscure. All right. So I'll go over the story of Fritz Honka, tell you a story like I do every Tuesday. And then after that, we could talk about Fritz. We could talk about somebody else. Donna says she never heard of him. So yeah, I figure that's probably going to be the majority, is that they haven't heard. And that's what I'm going for with these topics we've done. I'm trying to go obscure. Now, eventually, I'll just get a wild hair and we'll do one that's a little more well known. Thought about doing Danny Rolling, the Gainesville Ripper. That's a good one, and it ties in crazy to the Idaho 4 case. I know they brought that up a while back, but man, I just watched the Danny Rolling documentary, and I guarantee you, whoever made up that story about what happened in the Idaho 4, because we know it's just a story, whoever made up that story must have watched Scream or a documentary on Danny Rolling and then found out he inspired Scream. A combination of that is who watched that stuff before they wrote that story, because it's exactly the same. Same knife, getting in on the slider and the back door. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. They definitely fashioned their story around the Danny Rolling story. But we'll do that for another day. But next week, like I said, we're going to the UK. Little Christmas story. Not really, but it's an awful story. It's an awful story. But what else do you expect, right? Okay, so let's get to Fritz. Okay, so in 1970s, Hamburg's nightlife was very infamous. We're talking about, cheap liquor, a shadowy kind of underworld going on. And out of this whole scene emerged one of Germany's most notorious killers, as I mentioned, Fritz Honka. So he's got this, he's going to these bars to meet these women. And the women he's meeting, I mean, I hate to say it, but I mean, rough is an understatement. Okay. Rough is an understatement. But I'm going to show you a picture of Fritz before we go any further, just in case you've not seen the thumbnail or any of the stuff I mentioned earlier before this episode. So he was in a car accident that deformed his face, that you see his nose is like pushed in, and it did something to his eye. But that happened like as an adult, like a young adult. So it's not like a childhood thing. So, but that's what this guy looks like. Very, very strange. Not somebody I'd want to be talking to in a dark bar. Cigarette smoke just hanging in the air. I could just see it right now. I could just see it. Okay, so that's who we're talking about. And this guy was called the Monster of Hamburg. He had a bunch of names, okay? But we need to start at the beginning, right, with this guy. Because most of these killers, it's amazing. We've talked about this in other episodes, but so many of these killers follow like it's like a cookie cutter, how they're raised and strange things that happen to them as children. It's sad, really, it is. So, anyway, he's born in Leipzig, Germany, 1935, into total poverty. His dad was imprisoned in a concentration camp and then later died of alcoholism. So, rough home life, okay? So he ends up growing up in orphanage because his mother couldn't handle it. They had like 15 kids or something like that. So he's growing up in an orphanage, very unstable, as you can only imagine. He ends up, though, as he gets a little bit older, he becomes an apprentice to a bricklayer, but couldn't do that because of some sort of allergic reaction he had to something they used in the process of bricklaying. So I'm assuming maybe the mortar, something like that. Anyway, couldn't do that. So then he migrates to Hamburg and worked a lot of just menial jobs, that kind of thing. Now, that car accident I mentioned, that was in 1956. So he was born in 35. So he would have been 21. So, or is that right? Yeah, 21. So, yeah, he was a young man, flattened his nose, caused him to squint. And he had a long standing self-esteem issues. He thought he looked horrible, that nobody would want him, nobody would be interested in him. I can't imagine, having to go through life with that nose like that. I mean, that's just terrible. So, I mean, I got my leg amputated. That was bad enough, but I got a prosthetic now, which, by the way, I'm wearing most days. I'm wearing the prosthetic during the whole day. So, slowly getting better and taking a few steps with the walker. So, more and more of that will be great. But I get it, the disfigurement. But his childhood was just full of abandonment, humiliation. He was small. His disfigurement, people ridiculed him, and he carried that bitterness into as an adulthood. I mean, there's no two ways about it. And you couple that with some heavy drinking, that's setting the stage for some violent behavior. Alcohol, as I've learned from watching a lot of these police body cam videos I do, alcohol is really bad, okay? I mean, I know if you do it within reason, that's fine, but people like this just get out of control with it. It's an addictive thing to some people. It's terrible. It really is. Because this is headed for disaster. So he usually is spending his nights at the bar, and I can't really pronounce it. Zum Goldenen Handschub or Hansha, but it translates to the Golden Glove. So they were all about like boxing and stuff like that there, had a bunch of decor. If you watch a documentary on him, they'll show you the bar. And now they have a sign over it that says something about Fritz Honka. So, like, you get a lot of these, tourists like me. If I was in Hamburg, Germany, damn well I'd be going to the Golden Glove to see where Fritz was hanging out. So you get people like me or others that will go there and want to see it. So they're like all about it. I'm sure they are. People, go in there just for that, and then they're customers, So he spent his time there, smoky dive bar. Sex workers were going there like after work or before work. It was just a bad, very seedy place. And this is where he would find his victims, like a lot of serial killers. They go for the vulnerable, right? You talk about the Green River Killer, killed 50 or 60 women, but they were all prostitutes. and he thought he was ridding the world. He was doing like God's work and all this kind of nonsense. So you have these Arthur Shawcross would be another one. That was in Rochester, New York, but same type of thing. Thought he was doing the world a favor by getting rid of these prostitutes. So it's not uncommon, and I think that's where we're headed here with Fritz. So his victims were older women and marginalized women, drug addicts, or also fellow alcoholics or addicts, just people that were not tracked by others. A lot of people didn't know where they were. These are people that typically didn't keep in touch with their families. So nobody knew even if they existed. So again, the perfect victim for a guy like this. So then he lures them to his house with promises of alcohol and the place to crash for the night. So, I'm sure they would rather do that than sleep out on the streets. But then what would happen is he would pressure these women, and they would refuse him. And so then he would get upset. Or if they did allow him to do anything, he was impotent. He had been impotent for, I don't know if his whole life or in his adulthood he was. So he was extremely self-conscious about that. So between the women making fun of him, even asking them for, sex, and you look at the ones that, he was, propositioning, this was just, total humiliation, back to his childhood, back to all that again. So it just follows him around. And so what would happen is he would get so upset, he would attack them. And his typical mode of murdering these women was strangulation. Okay. And strangulation is very difficult. I mean, you've heard this before, other serial killers that are interviewed. It takes a lot of strength to strangle somebody. So usually they'll use a ligature, which would be like a rope or a nylon stocking or something like that. And he would wrap it around their throat and then put like a stick on it and twist it, which is what Gacy did. And so, that kind of thing would make it easier to choke somebody out. But that's typically what he used was nylon stockings, just like the Boston Strangler, just like a lot of serial killers of this era. Why? Because women, especially prostitutes, typically wore those things when they were out working, so they were just there. Okay. He was just kind of a grab it and go. I think there was one time he used a rope, but he used some sort of ligature. And so, he was just enraged. And sometimes, he attempted the sex with them, but never led to that. Never led to that. So what happens? He's up in his apartment. He dismembers the bodies with a saw and a knife. He hid the remains in plastic bags behind walls in the attic and in the crawl spaces around his apartment. It was all kinds of nooks and crannies. It's an old building, real old building. Neighbors complained about the foul odor, just like they did with Dahmer. We've heard all those stories. It had to be just horrendous in there. This guy had pine tree, the air fresheners. He had like dozens of them in every room. The police said that there was so many of them they couldn't believe it, but he had them all over the place, I'm sure, because it was probably disgusting. And this dude's living there, with all these bodies around. It's so nasty. But the people are complaining, but he's blaming it on the Greeks that are cooking food with weird spices in it compared to what he was used to eating. It's just like they did with Dahmer, the same type of thing. Blamed it on maybe some immigrants and cooking, Indian immigrants. I'm not sure, but, people that use spices that we're not familiar with here in the United States. But this guy was just a powder keg. And it was time after time he would get these women up there and he would do his thing to try to get them to give in to him. And then when they wouldn't, he would just rage out and choke them to death with ligatures, as we talked about. And then he would dismember them and put them in bags and hide them in this attic and crawl spaces of his apartment, walls all over the place, just nasty. So neighbors are complaining. And so for years, though, he lived in these concealed, in this kind of just nastiness until finally some fate intervened. And this is very fascinating how this guy gets caught because this is one I've never heard of before. All right. So it's July 15th, 1975. A fire broke out in Honka's apartment building. Okay. So the firefighters are doing their job, right? Fighting this blaze. I mean, it was a hell of a fire. I don't know what started the fire, but the defense, the police are doing their thing and they start finding, what do they find? Bodies. They're like, what the hell is this? There's all these body parts in these bags, which had to be absolutely vile, especially if they got, partly burned or whatever. I don't believe they did, but they wound up figuring out that all of these bodies were around this one apartment, you know. So it wasn't too hard to figure out, which tenant was the one doing some weird stuff in the walls. So they wind up going into the apartment building up to the floor where he was. And he's coming up the stairs acting like, nothing to see here. And the cops snatch him up. They're like, hey, is this your apartment? What the hell are all these bodies up there? And he's acting like he doesn't know what they're talking about. Really, really wild at first. And then eventually, once he gets interrogated and stuff, he ends up breaking down and he confesses to it. But at first, he was like, he doesn't know how they got there and can't explain why he's got a couple thousand pine tree air fresheners hanging all over his apartment. I mean, God damn, this guy's just really ridiculous. So ended up going to trial in 1976. The defense argued diminished responsibility due to his alcoholism and mental instability. So they end up, trying him for, obviously the murders. I think there was 7 or 8 of them that he was responsible for. They put him on trial, but because of this diminished responsibility, apparently that flew. So they wound up giving him 4 counts of manslaughter instead of murder, which is insane, and 15 years in a psychiatric hospital. So talk about a light sentence. And I don't know what you guys think in the chat, if you think that sounds legit, but I mean, this guy, I don't know. Like I said, he was in that car accident. I don't know that it really diminished him mentally, but maybe it did. Maybe I didn't see that. But nonetheless, that's what the jury or the judge bought. And so he was able to use it. So he did 15 years. And then he got out. He changed his name to Peter something, very common last name in Germany, and just kind of faded into obscurity. He just kind of did the retirement thing and kept to himself, and apparently just, died, I think 10 years later or something like that. So he got to spend at least some time, just after he got out. But whether you agree with that or not, 7 or 8 women, that's terrible, So he's released in 93 after doing 18 years. So he did more than the 15. And then, like I said, he lived in a nursing home and died at age 63 and 98. So 5 years. So 5 years. 5 years. And there is a book about him, but it's in German. There's also a movie about him, but I believe it's also in German. There are a documentary or two out there on him. So if you want to check him out, I think it's World's Most Evil Killers, which is always good stuff. I believe that's where I heard about him. But the Golden Glove Bar still stands today. I mean, it's a chilling reminder of what happened there, and they've got this Fritz Honka sign up above it. It's kind of funny, but yeah, I mean that is the Fritz Honka story. So very, very strange with the psychological side. You've got, all this humiliation, the impotence, people picking on him. Then, in his 20s, he gets in that accident, it deforms his face. He's just very, very vulnerable himself, and he winds up going after other vulnerable people that he was able to overpower because they were older and, they were, drunks and addicts themselves, so they weren't in any shape to fight back. And he had his tactic down with the stocking and the ligature to tighten it up and get it to where he was able to strangle these women, and then wound up cutting them up and putting them in the walls. I mean, just absolutely nuts. So yeah, I see people asking if he got out. Yeah, he got out. Yeah, I mean, here's a good one from Meanie. She says, that's insane. I seriously doubt didn't do it again. Yeah, I mean, who knows with this dude, I mean, I don't know what kind of shape he was in when he got out. He was in a nursing home, so maybe not. But hopefully there was nobody missing at the nursing home there. But yeah, what a story, huh? And yeah, Donna says, an easy sentence. Yeah, and he's in a hospital. Now, if it was a hospital for like the criminally insane, that may not be such a pleasant experience there. So who knows? But nonetheless, I agree, Don. I'd rather be in a hospital than a prison, for gosh sakes. I don't know how I'd get around a prison with my one leg here. Here's a good one from Meanie. I don't know how old he was when he got out, but he probably just changed his disposal method and did it again. Yeah, who knows? Who knows? These guys, sometimes they just can't control themselves. And, it was interesting, just like BTK. With BTK, as he got older, so were his victims. Why? Because he was getting older. He couldn't physically handle these like 20-year-olds anymore. So he was going after the older women that he was, senior citizens and stuff that he was able to overpower. So they do that. They kind of tailor the victim to their physical abilities. This guy was small, but he was probably strong because he worked physical labor his whole life. So he's probably a pretty strong dude, and was able to obviously get these women drunk enough to where he could do what he wanted to do. So yeah, it's an urge. I mean, he says that as well. These urges just don't go away. It's just like pedophiles, right? Probably get demonetized. These lives don't make me any money anyway, so I guess it doesn't matter if they get demonetized. But these pedophiles and stuff, they don't ever stop. I mean, it's like you can't cure it. It's not something that you could just therapy out and be good. Ed Gein was another one. He went to the mental institution, but I think that dude was legitimately messed up. for what he was doing, digging up bodies in the cemetery and doing all that nasty masks and all that stuff and wearing the skins. I mean, disgusting, but you would assume that's insane, right? Somebody that could do that lived amongst it and acted like it was no big deal. You know, that might be somebody I would buy that was actually insane. But it's so rare. I think I was watching an interview with a cop or an attorney that said it's like 1% of people that go for the insanity defense get it get it to work. Most people don't get it at all, and if they do, they get found guilty anyway. So interesting. Good questions. Good questions. Yeah, misleading evidence says if you're dismembering, you got to be some kind of crazy. I agree. I mean, I remember we did the episode on Tommy Karate, who was a worked for the mobs doing hits, and this dude was brutal. And when they got a body, he would jump in the bath, he'd strip down naked and get in the bathtub with him and have him hand him a hacksaw, and he just hacksaw the body to pieces in the bathtub with him in it with him, and then he'd wash off and everything and then get out. Yeah, it's messed up. So these guys, that do that, it is definitely taking it to the next level, right? I mean, it'd be horrible enough to shoot somebody or do that when you're from afar, like Son of Sam, right? But when you're up close and personal, like this case with Rob Reiner, what an absolutely horrible, horrible crime with him and his wife. So many movies that guy made. My gosh, I've been thinking about doing a video about him on the channel, but I don't know if it'd do any good because it seems like anybody that only wants to hear about the Idaho 4, but with the fact that his son was, an addict and he'd been to rehab 17 times, and then he goes and they have some sort of fight at Conan O'Brien's house, like a Christmas party, and they were fighting at the Christmas party, I guess. People heard it. And then they went home, and then, sometime in the night, he killed them. And I think it was 3 o'clock the next day, the daughter found them. But, butchered. I mean, like not quick. I mean, well, throat slit, so maybe it was quick, but who knows? I don't know how many wounds they all had, but it sounds like a very violent type thing. Yeah, my mom, yeah, it's terrible. I mean, I grew up watching him on All in the Family. And then of course I love Spinal Tap. Like that's got to be one of my favorite. If I was to make like a top 10, it would easily be in the top 5. Easily. I've watched it so many times. It's great. And then me and my son went to see the new one in the theaters recently, and it was great. I mean, I love his work. I mean, Stand By Me is fantastic. Um, Misery was unbelievably good. I mean, it's one after the other, and he's all over the different genres. He's done the rom-coms, he's done straight comedies, he's done drama. I mean, his body of work is simply unbelievable. So it is an absolute damn shame that happened to him. So I think that's terrible. But man, what a story that is, right? That kid, did he do it? I mean, it sure seems like it. But we always say innocent till proven guilty. But I don't know who else had the opportunity to do that. But let's see here. I'm looking in the comments. Yeah, Donna says there was so much blood with 2 people, you would think we would have seen more blood in Idaho 4. Yeah, you're damn right. You're damn right, Donna, because that's a load of BS, right? I've been saying that since the 911 tape came out, and they got, Hunter in there acting all innocent when he already knew damn well that she was dead, and could have some people believe he was the one that finished her off, That's a messed up thought to think about, right? What was the knife for, Hunter? So it's interesting, and I don't know if we'll ever hear what actually happened there. But that 911 tape to me is where I knew something was kooky with the blood because no mention of it whatsoever. None. Zero. When you would have been, that would have been the first thing you saw in that room with Ethan and her. Plus, Ethan had the throat slit, so you had an arterial wound spraying like a sprinkler. For lack of, I'm sorry, but that's legit. That room would have looked like it was painted red. And nobody said anything about that. Nobody. Nobody said anything about the overwhelming smells that would have been in that room. From the bodies to the excrement to the blood, not one mention of smell, not one mention of blood. Nobody was covered in it, walking through it, anything. So something's definitely up because the coroner at 5:30 p.m. or 6, whenever her ass showed up there, she claimed that it looked like the Mansons showed up. It was so gory and bloody. So how did it go from not gory and bloody at noon when they called 911 to a bloodbath at 5:30 or 6? Somewhere in there, somebody did something. Don't know what, or the 911 people were lying, or she's lying. So there's something's not right there. That does not make any sense at all to me. So, but here, looking here. Yeah, I mean, bloody footprints. He would have had them. That's what the cleanup was about, I think, Meanie. I mean, I think that, that's what they were doing for 8 hours. They were getting their story straight. They were calling people for advice. They wound up coming up with this ridiculous 911 scenario that was obviously acted out. They probably reenacted it several times because it sounded like that to me, like they had done it before. And there were just certain things that just didn't sound real to me, like somebody was reading it like off a page or a piece of paper or something. Something just wasn't right with that 911 call. Really wasn't. So, yeah, misleading evidence brings up a great point. I've thought before as well, Alicia, that she's starting to think that they were killed or died a different way. I've thought so too. I've thought so too. I think it's very possible that somebody went in there with a 22 and did it like mafia style, like up close and personal in the back of the head, and you're done. Um, there wouldn't have been that much blood from something like that if they could have done that. There wouldn't have been that much blood there. And another thought I had is you had a whole bunch of guys that were super into hunting, all in that frat, all that campus had to be just rampant with guys that knew how to hunt, being in Idaho like that. And so guys like that, like Showalter, they know how to field dress animals, gutting them and getting them cleared out so you can more easily drag them out, like I've seen my dad do with deer. So, could they have field dressed these kids out in God knows where? I mean, you had a lot of wooded areas around there. They could have ditched into the woods and you wouldn't have seen them on cameras or anything. They could have disemboweled them there and brought them in clean. And that's why there could have been no blood or very little blood there when he was in that room. Or it could have looked like the Manson showed up and he lied. I don't know. Something's not right. Something's not right. Yeah, like Donna says here, the pictures show no blood. The pictures show very little blood. What little they do show. So I saw my buddy Juan here. Where's Juan? There he is. Juan Molina, what's up, my friend? Good to see you here. Merry Christmas to you and your family. I see your daughter on Facebook and killing it wrestling, Juan. That's so awesome. Horn tie to her. That's fantastic, man. Definitely a good dad, my friend. Good dad. All right. Anybody want to talk about any other true crime stuff? We got about 20 minutes before we call it quits here. If anybody wants to talk more about old Fritz Honka, or if you want me to tell you about the guy that we're going to talk about next week, how about that? The UK, we got a lot of people here from the UK that like watching these. So I want to go back to the UK, a real creepy one, John Christie. This dude is really messed up. I think it's 10 Rollington Way. I think that's the infamous address where he murdered, I think it was 8 women and buried them, not all of them, but some of them in his backyard, which of course they call a garden, or in the walls of his kitchen. Another one burying him in the walls. I don't know what the thing was if there was like a insulation purpose, like why you would put the bodies in the walls, but it's definitely strange because you'd think you'd smell it. I mean, geez, I don't know what they expect, but yeah. So the guy gets eventually, of course, gets caught. But yeah, it's a good one. He poses as like a surgeon, and he's doing abortions in his apartment, and he's charging these women, and he puts like gas on them to like put them out, but then he puts so much gas he kills them. I mean, it's messed up. It's a messed up story. John Christie, like mid 20th century, like the 40s, I think he was doing his thing. He's executed in 53, but we're going to talk about him next week because it's a good one. John Christie. I see your chat there. Yeah, definitely let me know. I know after this, I'm going to be eating supper and I got a busy night after that, but maybe tomorrow, or if you want to email it to me, whichever, I would definitely love to hear it. That would be good. So anybody else? Anybody want to talk about any other cases, whether it be Idaho 4 or any of them? Anybody following that David case? That's pretty interesting. Very strange with the girl being dead in his trunk of a car registered to him, and he claims he doesn't know anything about it and he wasn't driving the car. The guy hasn't been, as far as I know, hasn't been arrested yet, so they don't have enough evidence to bring him in. His tour manager talked to the cops, but he was all sketchy, I think. He's just been very strange. The cops are like, why didn't you cancel the tour when this body shows up in the trunk of his car? And it's just like, didn't want to stop. So it's an interesting case if you're not familiar. He spells David weird. It's like D F, or instead of A, it's a number 4 VE. So it's weird. Or David, DAVID, but the A is a 4. So it's strange. But that's what that is. If you see that would be an interesting case to check out. So yeah, I would definitely always love to hear from you guys. And I got this new. I put it in the chat earlier. I've got this new video. I've got a reaction channel that I'm working on called Big Ball Guy Reacts. If you're not a sub over there, go over check it out because I got a brand new video. I'm going to post the link, my very first video with the new channel, and I'll share this with you so you guys can go check it out. I could definitely use some views, and I could definitely use some likes and comments and all that kind of stuff, but that's the link, and you guys can you guys can watch my reaction video. It's only 10 minutes long. I'm going to keep them short, but I'm going to do like Maury. I'm going to do Tool Academy, the world's worst cheapskates, all that kind of stuff, trash TV. I'm just going to get on there and just rip on it. So it's going to be pretty funny. I think the first one turned out good. It's about the 2003 Super Bowl ads for Reebok that featured the Office linebacker, terrible Terry Tate. It's a good one, so you'll like that. You'll like that. I am not familiar with the Rebecca Park case, although it seems to ring some sort of bell with me, but I'm not offhand familiar with that. I'll have to check that out. I'm always up for new stuff. So, all right. Anybody else? Anybody else? Donna says she's going to be watching it right after the live. That's good, Donna. I appreciate your support so much. You've been just a tremendous help, and I don't say it enough how much I appreciate you for always being here. You guys all that are always here, just means a lot, and it's a lot of fun, even though the channel, I mean, I had a big jump here with this latest video I did. I hate to say I told you so, but I got some hate from it a little bit. People hating the Deathany shirt big time. A lot of people liked it, though. More people liked it than didn't like it. But the ones that didn't like it were like real shitty about it. So I just, told them stuff like, thanks for watching and commenting. It helps the algorithm. More people see the video. But yeah, so I'll be doing more videos and would love to hear, suggestions, like great stuff you'd like to hear me comment on. Goofy stuff. Steven Seagal would be another one I wouldn't mind doing because he's a fool and a total fraud. So I would love to do some of that too. Going to do some dumb criminals. Going to get AR Hayes on to do some dumb criminal stuff with me. So that'll be awesome. So I do plan on having guests on there on Big Ball Guy Reacts. So anyway, with that, I'm going to go ahead and eat my dinner and enjoy the rest of the night with my beautiful wife. And you guys all have a great week. I know next week is Christmas. I am going to be doing this on Tuesday, so that'll be the Richard Christie. He's a drummer for death metal bands. John Christie, that's it. John Christie. We'll be talking about him. I thought about him or the acid bath killer. We'll definitely get to hate. He's the acid bath killer. That's a good one too. Putting people in vats of acid, making people disappear. Yeah, that's a good one too. There's so many. The Moors murderers, that's a couple that did that. There's a lot of them. So if you're in the UK and you want to see some more, I'll be doing more. But we want to keep them moving around the globe. And so we'll see. But anyway, have a good rest of your week. I'll be live on Saturday at 4 Central. It'll just be me. And we'll be doing the usual topics of the day. I'm sure I'll be talking more about Rob Reiner. I'll be talking some Idaho 4, I'm sure. And whatever else comes up. We'll be riffing on stuff and get in one more before the Christmas holiday. So with that, I appreciate it very much. If anybody is interested to donate or do anything like that, I've got that down below. Obviously not expected, but if you want to do that, that's certainly up to you to do. So we could do it a variety of ways. But again, I know it's Christmas time and everybody's money's tight. So, you got to get those gifts. I get it. So have a good weekend and we'll see you next time. Serial Killer Story Hour.
fired up and thinking you earned a nice cold beer or beverage of choice, or if the greenery is what you dig, I hope it's moist. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and leave a word in the comments. It helps the video grow. Hell yeah, tell your friends you rode with her middle man today. Spread the word like a case of the clap in a trailer park. We all know that hussy who can get the whole park distraction. Hell yeah, tell your friends you rode with Murder Metal May and today. Spread the word like a case of the clap in a trailer park. Like a case of clack in a trailer park.